This week, the internet is not quite ready for improved DNS security. Netgear makes some security fixes, Apple EFI, and why no one really patches it. The FBI can keep its secrets. Stack Overflow coding, Whole Foods breach, insights as to why Equifax did not patch, and unmasking DNS mask vulnerabilities. Ferruh and Sven join us from Netsparker in our expert commentary on a very timely topic, the Apache Struts vulnerability. All that and more on this edition of Hack Naked News. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News.
Most of the organizations I work with, they have
released. Yes, you read it.
Actually do
Cryptokey to the original Linux kernel security with Linux kit.
So I hope everybody has their resistance built up.
Brought to you by. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested these public assets? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/hacknaked and use the code HN30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Welcome everyone to this episode of Hack Naked News. It's number 143 for October 3rd, 2017. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. A couple of quick announcements before we get started. Make sure you check out our fine friends at itpro.tv. That's right. If you work for an employer and you want to be trained, you should encourage your employer. Or if you're a manager in security and you want your people to be trained on all sorts of topics, not just IT security, general IT stuff, project management, it's all there. You can do a corporate subscription and manage your employees' subscriptions via the supervisor portal from IT Pro TV. You can still try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off by using the code HN30 and going to itpro.tv/hacknaked. Cyber Reason and Security Weekly are doing a webcast together. That's right. Here, Ross Restici, myself, and Joff Thayer discuss techniques used to turn threat data into usable information and the symbiotic relationship between said information and a hunting program. Go to Security Weekly, excuse me, go to securityweekly.com/cyberreason to register today. And now, the security news. Icann has postponed a scheduled DNS Cryptokey rollover. It seems the internet's not ready for this, as Icann, who is of course the overseer of the internet's namespace, announced this week that it was going to postpone the scheduled change to the cryptographic key that protects the domain name system. Icann said in a statement that the change was to occur on October 11th, but new data indicates that a significant number of resolvers used by ISPs and large network operators are not ready. Icann hopes to reschedule the rollover for the first quarter of next year. Netgear's been busy fixing 50 vulnerabilities in routers, switches, and NAS devices. I found this part of the article to be really interesting. Most of the vulnerabilities and patches disclosed last week were reported via the company's bug bounty program, which we reported on, that launched in January of this year in partnership with BugCrowd. Since inception, the company has made several disclosures via the program, including a password bypass bug found in hundreds of thousands of Netgear routers that was reported earlier in the year. Seems the bug bounty program has been successful. The latest wave of 50 vulnerabilities fixes some of the common flaws found in router firmware, including a dangerous remote command injection flaw. Researchers are quick to blame router and IoT vendors that they claim for years have put little effort into security and testing, and hardening of their products. But it's clear the Netgear bug bounty program have increased the security of their products. However, the difficult part is getting people to actually apply the patches. Duo Security's been busy poking some holes at Apple's EFI and more so users' unwillingness to apply the patch. The registers reported that Duo has done analysis of 73,000 Apple Macs and found that users are unknowingly exposed to sophisticated malware-based attacks because of outdated firmware. On average, 4.2% of 73,324 Macs used in the enterprise environments analyzed are running an EFI firmware version that's different from what they should be running. The OS version and EFI version released with that OS version is different. There are reasons that the EFI updates are lagging behind, including users and administrators not having a high degree of confidence in these updates, which in the past have been very problematic. This has now led to them being ignored for some time. It, of course, leaves computers vulnerable to Thunderstrike, an attack that uses a 35-year-old legacy option in the ROMs to replace the RSA keys and Mac's extensible firmware interface, or EFI, to allow malicious firmware to be installed and lockout attempts to remove it. The FBI is being allowed to keep details secret of the iPhone hacking tool. Federal courts have ruled in favor of the Justice Department, stating the risks of revealing the name of the vendor and the costs are just too risky. In her ruling, federal judge Tanya Chutkan said that the naming the vendor and its cost would be putting a target on its back and could lead to the loss or theft of the hacking tool that was, of course, used to gain access to an encrypted iPhone. The suit was filed by various media outlets, but no appeals will be allowed in this case. Java security is plagued by crappy documentation, complex APIs, and most notably, the reliance on Stack Overflow to get information about your code. Now, we've all done it. We've all gone to Stack Overflow and reused someone else's code because they had an example that fixed our problem. I've done it. I'm guilty. But don't rely on this. Ironically enough, Stack Overflow, get it? In a paper that was released by researchers titled Secure Coding Practices in Java, Challenges and Vulnerabilities, these 5 researchers analyzed Stack Overflow posts related to Java security. They found that many developers don't understand security well enough to implement it properly, and that the overly complicated APIs in the Spring Security Framework and other libraries lead to frustration and errors, and that some popular Stack Overflow answers are unsafe and outdated. It'd be interesting to launch a project to now comment on all of those posts. There was hundreds of posts that they analyzed and found to have security vulnerabilities. We need to go comment on them and correct any insecurities. Any takers? Whole Foods is investigating a payment card data breach. Not really anything to panic about. The grocery retailer Whole Foods announced on September 28th that it was investigating a possible data breach involving unauthorized access to payment card information. The breach is limited to table service restaurants and tap rooms within a limited number of Whole Foods stores and does not impact the company's primary checkout system used by in-store shoppers. Whole Foods was, of course, acquired by Amazon earlier this year. This is, I think, my favorite story of the week. Equifax breach impact expands as the former CEO admits patching failure. Now, it just came out that an additional 1.5 million people's records were now exposed, so that adds to the overall number. But I believe that this issue that the CEO admitted in a briefing, in a hearing, is one that we've talked about on the show before. And Smith, the former CEO, noted that on March 9th, an email was sent internally at Equifax directing those responsible for struts within the organization to update the software. He says, consistent with Equifax's patching policy, the Equifax Security Department required that patching occur within a 48-hour time period. Smith then goes on to say, we now know that the vulnerable version of Apache Struts within Equifax was not identified or patched in response to the internal communication on March 9th by the information technology personnel. Additionally, Smith noted that on March 15th, Equifax's Information Security Department ran scans that should have identified systems that were vulnerable to the Struts vulnerability. Those scans, however, did not detect the impacted systems that remained unpatched. We could do a whole show just like really on that last sentence, but we have to move on. So behind the mask, yet more DNS and DHCP vulnerabilities. A research team at Google has discovered several vulnerabilities in DNS mask, the popular DNS and DHCP server commonly used in IoT devices. I found it interesting that Kubernetes was listed as being patched in all versions, which was a Google research project, which could have fueled Google's interest in helping secure DNS masks, the open source project. And they also then went on to patch it in Kubernetes, which must use it in its underlying architecture. I thought that relationship was interesting. Google did work closely with the software maintainers to ensure patches were pushed. There were 3 remote code execution vulnerabilities, as well as 4 or 5 other ones that were denial of service and 1 information leak and an ASLR bypass. I fear that many IoT devices and projects that rely on this software may lag on updates, and some devices just may never be updated that are end of life, but still running the DNS mask software, leaving these vulnerabilities, including those 3 remote code execution flaws, unpatched forever. You must be running version 2.78 of DNS mask to be protected from these flaws. And now we're going to come back with our fine friends from Netsparker, talk about the Apache Struts vulnerability. But first, a word from our sponsors. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. Welcome back to Hack Naked News. A quick announcement, B-Sides Connecticut is happening October 7th. That's this weekend. So if you don't have tickets, you're probably not going because they're sold out. There's still sponsorship slots, but Doug White from Security Weekly will be there doing hacker trivia and all kinds of fun stuff, and we'll have T-shirts. So make sure you check that out. If you were able to get tickets, there was a waiting list as well. One I'm very excited about, Providence HackerCon is an event being co-hosted by Roger Williams University and Paul Security Weekly, designed to introduce high school students who are participating in the Cyber Patriot program to an industry-style conference. Myself, Ben Jackson, Doug White, Ron and Cindy Gula, as well as others from Security Weekly and others in the community will be speaking. I've actually opened up the registration to those who are interested in encouraging the youth of today to get interested in cybersecurity. So whether you're in a Cyber Patriot program or not, go to our website, securityweekly.com/ProvHackCon. There's a registration link in there. It's free. You can come attend. You can hang out with us. You can hang out with Ron and Cindy Gula. Ben Jackson, who's been on the show numerous times giving fabulous technical segments. We'll all be there giving talks and hanging out for the day on October 21st at the Providence Public Library, which is a really cool building. So make sure you do that. securityweekly.com/ProvHackCon. I have with me Ferruh Mavituna and Sven from Netsparker. Ferruh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I am disheartened that folks can't find the Apache Struts vulnerability, because I have to imagine that the fabulous Netsparker products would detect that vulnerability very accurately, knowing you and your organization and the hard work you put in and the diligence you put into your checks. I would imagine, and the segment today is largely focused on how we discover and exploit the Apache Struts vulnerability, which I thought was very timely to our discussion today.
Right, yeah, it definitely will. The whole Equifax thing, there are like multiple issues, right? So there is lack of patching. I think there is lack of inventory stacking, like you need to know what kind of, what you have in where, without even scanning it. Mm-hmm. And there is like this old kind of twist. They were already scanning but not getting the right results, which maybe should introduce a kind of a process into companies where, just like checking backup, you need to check whether your scanner is actually working as expected or not.
Yeah, it's, we have kind of similar backgrounds, right? I spent 7 years at Tenable Network Security, and you and I both read the same thing, and we kind of cringed because we know that the products, when they're properly updated and maintained and tuned, do a really good job of discovering especially high-level vulnerabilities. I mean, it very well could have been they were running the scanning tool and not applying the latest updates. So it didn't have the check for Apache Struts at the time they ran the scan because they weren't maintaining their tool. Of course, that's a resounding endorsement for your cloud platform as well, because those updates are included, and that maintenance is somewhat done for you, correct?
That is correct. Also, I wonder, obviously, it's kind of technical details and kind of, we don't know the facts just yet in that details. But I wonder what kind of scanning they have done, because we are talking about a web-specific vulnerability.
Yep.
That's like OGNL injection in a particular struts condition, where if you are, like, you will find many tools, they are not just designed for web scanning. So they might be just scanning with something that wouldn't consider this in the scope in the first place, why they just assume it would.
Yep.
So that might be part of the problem as well.
Nope, that's a good point as well. And speaking of this vulnerability, Sven's going to give us a demonstration as to how it's exploited. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I would say let's see it. He's got a good demo, and let's see what he's got.
Awesome. Sven, welcome to the program today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We love having you on the program, Sven. You're a ninja, so I'm very excited about your segment today.
Thank you. So I'm going to demo different struts vulnerabilities. It's not just one. There are multiple ones. And at first, people assumed that the vulnerability that pwned Equifax was a deserialization vulnerability in its REST plugin. And I will share my screen and tell you what I mean.
Yeah, now Java and other languages, while you do that, Sven, have been plagued by deserialization vulnerabilities, which is basically just taking in a bunch of unstructured data, correct? Which is, I mean, for any language is problematic anytime you're taking data from the user or different sources, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, I prepared some kind of explanation on deserialization because it's a topic that's not really easy to understand.
It's not. Yeah, I gave kind of a really bad high-level overview of that. There's a lot more details to it, and in fact, like every time it crops up, I have to like go back and read and try and like relearn the deserialization kind of structure and how that works.
Okay, so I will give you an example that's a little bit easier to understand. It's about cake. So when you have a cake, you want to sell it, it's hard to transport it like as a whole cake. It's easier to transport the mixture and then bake it when you're at home. And it's similar with deserialization. So you turn an object into a format that's easy to store, easy to transport, and generally easy to handle. And later, when you need it, you can then deserialize it, and and it will be the same object as you had before, provided
someone hasn't poisoned the ingredients in transport.
Exactly. So in our example, the cake is the object, and the baking mix is obviously the serialized object. Then you have some instructions on the back of your package when you buy the mix, and this is basically what you have to do to make your cake, to make it to the intended to the intended product. And and once you bake it, you basically deserialize it. I don't know if that's easy to understand.
No, it is. That's a much better explanation than I've ever gotten on deserialization vulnerabilities. Thank you for that.
Okay, so basically you can't write on the back of the package that you want the person who bakes the cake to put gasoline in it and then the whole oven burns. But that's basically what you can do when you deserialize objects. So basically you can tell some code parts to do stuff that wasn't intended before. And that's how I would explain it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we have here the description of the vulnerability. It uses the Xstream handler with an instance of Xstream for deserialization without any type filtering. Exactly. So, but this wasn't the vulnerability that that pawned Equifax. What really pawned Equifax was OGNL expression injection. And it's I don't know if you have ever heard of it before, but it's similar to a template injection. So let's take this here. Here we have OGNL expression 2 times 4, and have to put in the H here and some other description. And once we submit it, we see that this was actually executed by the Struts showcase. Yeah, and this was in the Struts 1 plugin. So you could use your Struts 1 code with Struts 2, actually, without having to change too much. And this was vulnerable to such an injection. However, this is quite boring to look at. So what we actually want to do is we want to get a shell here. So let's type in this a little bit more difficult string here. Have our listener ready. And then submit it. And there you go. This is basically what you can do with an OGNL expression injection. However, this was also another vulnerability. This didn't pawn Equifax either. So you already see that Struts 2 is a very, very special framework that is very vulnerable to the different kinds of attacks. Now, in the same showcase, what we have here, it uses Struts 2 that is vulnerable to yet another vulnerability. And let's just look at how Netsparker would find it. So we start the scan. We only scan for this specific vulnerability here. And wait for a bit. It shouldn't take long. So what this does is it tries to find and exploit the vulnerability and give us a proof of this. So as you see here, I hope it is visible enough.
Yeah, I can see it.
In a little bit.
There you go.
Okay, what we see here is that we use such an OGNL expression again. It's with this % and the curly brackets template. And what we do here is we execute a system command as well. So when we look here, we already confirmed this vulnerability by issuing the command who am I. Now, yet again, this is a little bit boring. So it shows us that we can execute commands, but to exploit it, we have to do something different. I don't think that you can see what I typed in here, in this window. I
can't. No, it looks like busy box.
Exactly.
SH.
So,
okay.
This is a free pro tip for you. This Struts and Tomcat installation runs on Ubuntu, and with Ubuntu you don't have the usual netcat with the flag compiled that's called gaping security hole that enables -e to bind to a shell. So what you can do instead is using busybox NC, which is often pre-installed on Ubuntu, at least on my installations, it's pre-installed, and that has the E flag still there, so you can use that instead. So let's restart our listener here and execute this command, and there we go. Okay, there we go, we have a shell. So it's that easy to exploit such a vulnerability. And the thing is, with web application vulnerabilities, you have a very small time frame where you can actually patch. And after that, you basically, you can assume that you were breached just because it's so quick and easy to build these exploits for web application vulnerabilities, instead of, let's say, a C program where you have to bypass certain mitigations. And yes, this is actually how quick it is.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. You don't have to worry about memory restrictions, and typically some of the other protections that might be in place as far as endpoints go. Basically, if you can build a TCP tunnel, you can exploit this vulnerability and gain access to the system. That's a great point.
Exactly. So this is yeah, we have the Tomcat user here. This installation runs on Tomcat 7, and it's not very good. You can't do too much with it. You can actually probably access the database and everything that is on the web application.
Right.
But you're not root yet. The thing is, if you take that long to patch your web application, it's probably safe to assume that there are other vulnerabilities that aren't fixed yet, that you can easily escalate your privileges there.
Yeah, and there was just a recent Linux kernel privilege escalation exploit that was released, or at least a vulnerability. I'm not sure if the exploit was released, but there was a vulnerability, a string of them recently.
Exactly, they are not that rare, especially if you think of Dirty Call that was applicable to almost every Linux box.
Absolutely. Was there more, Sven, or was that? I didn't want to cut you off. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, Sven and Ferruh, thank you so much. That was a great description of deserialization vulnerabilities, some good points on discovering these vulnerabilities in your environment, making sure you have the right tools and processes to do that, and just how easy it is to exploit some of these vulnerabilities and gain a shell. So thank you both for appearing on this episode of Hack Naked News.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thank you.
And that concludes this episode. See you next time.